Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dorset Council Northern Area Planning Committee meeting on Tuesday, the 12th of April. I'm Councillor Sherry Jesperson, and I am chair of this committee. With me here is the Vice Chairman, Councillor Mary Penfold, our solicitor, Phil Crowther, our Hannah Smith, who is Area Planning Manager, Verity Murphy and Ross Calhane, who are planning officers, Steve Savage, who is our Transport Development Manager, and we have Megan Rochester and Denise Hunt from Democratic Services keeping us all in line. And we also have with us today John Miles, who's a Dorset Council apprentice. And if we all behave well enough, we may convince him to have a career in local government. The councillors are arranged here and they will introduce themselves, if that's all right, when they first speak. Thank you very much. For those of you who've not been to a planning meeting before, or any members of the public watching live, I'll just very briefly outline the procedure. We've got a number of applications before us today, which we will consider in turn. First, I will invite the case officer to present their report and recommendations, followed by presentations from other officers. The reports and all the background papers and the submissions from members of the public and parish councils have all been available for members to read and ask questions. Next, I will invite those members of the public who have registered to speak to address the committee. Please come to the table up the front here when called. The microphone will pick up your voice, but please speak as clearly as you can because it's an ambient mic and it's not as clear as we would wish. Speakers each have 3 minutes, and in the interest of fairness, I will be fairly firm on the 3 minutes. Now, when we have then heard all of the speakers, I will close the public part of the meeting and no further interventions from the floor are permitted. Committee members can then ask any questions for clarification, and after that, they will deliberate and come to a view. I have to remind visitors that this is a Dorset Council meeting held in public, not a public meeting. So only those members who've registered to speak may do so. And you mustn't speak to directly to any committee member, nor pass any information to a committee member during the course of the meeting. I was nearly in trouble at the strategic planning meeting when a member of the public passed me a note. So please don't do that. So that's lovely. Good, we're underway then. We'll now proceed to our agenda. And the first agenda item, Megan, is to hear the apologies.
Perfect. So we've received apologies for absence from councillors Emma Parker, Tim Cook, Belinda Rideout, John Andrews and Stella Jones.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. But we are still well and truly quorate. Members, do you have any declarations of interest that you need to make on any of the items before us? I'm seeing nothing. As always, if anything occurs to you as we go along, you can always bring it to our attention. Members, can I confirm the minutes of the meeting of the 15th of March 2022 as a correct record? Yes. Great, thank you very much. I will sign them in due course. Public participation I've covered. So the planning applications then, our first planning application, ladies and gentlemen, we're on agenda item 6. This is land off Butts Close in Marnell to develop the land by erection of up to 39 dwellings, form vehicle access and pedestrian access and public open space. And this is an outline application only today. I'm going to ask Verity Murphy if you will give us your presentation. Verity, the floor is yours.
As you've heard, this application is for the erection of up to 39 dwellings. It is an outline application and it is to determine access only at this stage. The application site is shown here on the site location plan, and it is located here on the aerial image. It's not located within a settlement boundary, however, it adjoins existing residential development in Marnell along its northern boundary. So here we have some images of the site. So on the left, this image is looking north. You can see the existing residential development to the north, and Chipple Lane runs to the west. This image is looking northeast. Again, you can see the line of residential development, and there are also distant views of the Church of St. Gregory. This is a view looking west. You can see the single-storey bungalows along the northern boundary, and to the west of the site are some more modern two-storey residential dwellings. Sorry, Chair, just waiting for my next slide to load. Okay, so these are views looking eastwards. Again, you can see the development along the northern boundary. So access is proposed from Butts Close in approximately this location here. The access road will provide for two-way traffic movements. It will also allow for refuse vehicles to enter the site. This green line here is an existing public right-of-way that will be maintained in the development. The proposal also includes a new pedestrian footpath and crossing shown here, and that will link the site with the rest of Butts Close. A transport statement has been submitted with the application and concludes that the cumulative impact of the development is not severe. So whilst the layout is a reserved matter at this stage, this illustrative master plan shows that 39 dwellings could fit comfortably on the site with enough space for public open space and private amenity for residents. In the north-western section of the site, there will be a leap. There'll also be a lap, and that is reflected in the update sheet. To the south of the site, we have some more open space. There is an attenuation basin as well. This central green section will allow views to be maintained towards the Church of St. Gregory to the northeast of the site. This is the illustrative housing plan. So the blue indicates the two bedroom dwellings, and the red indicates the 3-bedroom dwellings. The yellow dots indicate the affordable units. So this site will provide 50% affordable housing, which is considered to be a significant benefit of the scheme and will be secured by a Section 106 agreement. Again, while scale is a reserved matter as well at this stage, this illustrative building heights plan shows that in the northern section of the site, it's likely to be single-storey bungalows, which is shown in green to reflect the existing single-storey nature of the properties along Butts Close. The purple indicates the 2-storey dwellings. There are a number of listed buildings in proximity to the site. These are shown as the little red stars on the map. The blue area is the conservation area. So the most significant listed buildings are the Church of St. Gregory, the Old Rectory and Conyers Place, which are to the northeast of the site. As the development is concentrated towards Butts Close, it's not considered to have any harm to these listed buildings. Similarly, as the development is located towards the western section of the site, and it's also behind existing modern residential development, in Butts Close, it's not considered to have any harm on the conservation area. Okay, so the application site is not located in the settlement boundary. Whilst Dorset Council does have a 5-year housing land supply, it fails the housing delivery test. So the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies to this application. That means that planning permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts of doing so would significantly outweigh the benefits. So there are significant financial contributions, affordable housing and open space provided in this application. Yeah, and here are the proposed heads of terms for the application. It will provide a leap and also a lap, which is also a significant benefit of the scheme. Okay, so to conclude, whilst the application site is not located in a settlement boundary, the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies. There are no objections to this application from case officers or consultees. There are no adverse impacts that would outweigh the benefits. It would result in up to 39 new homes in a sustainable location. There are significant economic and social benefits associated with the scheme, and the Section 106 secures significant planning obligations. So the recommendation is to grant, subject to Section 106 and conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Beautifully clear as always. We could now hear from Steve Savage, Transport Development Manager. Steve, would you like to add your bit to this? Thank you very much.
Chair, and just for the benefit of the members of the public, I represent the Highway Authority, or a statutory consultee in the planning process. Now, whilst the current application is for up to 39 dwellings, the submitted transport assessment utilises the trip generation figures that were agreed for the previous application, which was for up to 74 dwellings, which provides us with a really robust analysis of likely traffic movements, particularly in the AM and the PM peaks, which are the main periods that we're looking at in terms of traffic, of course. The actual figures are identified on page 23 of the officer's report. Now, the transport assessment has considered the cumulative impact of both this site, the identified SLAR sites in Marnhull, and the committed development sites in the assessment, primarily to ensure that the junction of Crown Road with New Street by the church to the east of the site will continue to work satisfactorily and freely. It's also looked at the likelihood of vehicles travelling down Chipple Lane, which is to the southwest of the site, which could be utilised as a shortcut from this development to Sturminster. Now, as you've heard, the access to the site isn't a reserved matter. The applicant seeks to serve it from Butts Close, providing a new priority junction in a bellmouth form and a pedestrian footway, which will be provided on the western side, as you can see there, of the internal access road, which will then be linking up to the existing pedestrian facilities on Butts Close. This access arrangement is acceptable to the Highway Authority, and its construction will be subject to a Section 278 agreement should planning permission be granted. Subject to a number of suggested highway conditions, including the construction traffic management plan, the Highway Authority has raised no objections to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Good. We are now here from our members of the public who'd like to comment on this. Could I ask Mark Turner? It's not as intimidating as the mastermind chair, all right.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Turner. I'm representing Marnhull Parish Council and wish to ask the planning committee to reject the planning application for the 39 homes on the basis of the development we don't believe is sustainable and doesn't deliver the required benefits for the village. On the sustainability piece, specifically, we'd like to point out that with this application for 39 houses, we then have a queue of developments, some totaling 139 additional dwellings in Marnhull, which essentially will raise the population of Marnhull by, or the housing population of Marnhull by a further 20%, which we believe, as a village of our size and shape with the infrastructure that we have, is It simply cannot be, our infrastructure, roads or amenities cannot cope with that level of development and that increase in capacity. I can point out the minutes of the Planning Committee of September 2020 when we looked at the development north of Burton Street, where the comment was made that that development would largely fulfill the needs, local needs, housing needs of the village. So one begs the question as to why this will be okay if we'd already got the required cover of the houses that we require. And if we're not going to do it now, when are we going to do it? Because this is going to continue and continue and continue. Secondly, on the traffic side, we believe that the number of movements as a result of the development, certainly into New Street around the primary school, open and closing time, would be significant. It already becomes rather crowded with the pathways not necessarily being conducive for parents to take their children to and from school. And therefore, this would only make the situation somewhat worse. The report makes mention of being able to walk to a bus stop and the post office and the local shop. The bus stop, it is indeed true. The bus, it doesn't exactly have a huge number of services servicing the village, which means that essentially everybody who is going to be living in the development will have to drive to work. There is no other option in some respects. And we also believe that progressively people will regard Chipple Lane as a convenient shortcut to.
Your time is nearly up.
Right, thank you. A convenient shortcut to the south of the village. I'd like to finish off by looking at the statements of benefits. Yes, affordable housing is a very good thing. We already have 24 houses identified as a result of the development north of Burton Street. Question would whether we need an additional 40, but that's okay. Reduction in the need to travel by car? Well, no, not really. Other than a trip to the spa or the church, people will have to jump in their cars to go to pretty well everywhere else. Temporary construction jobs? Well, yes, but they're temporary, so that's not really a benefit. And with a construction of this type, you're going to use large contractors.
Could you come to a conclusion?
Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you. Sorry to interrupt you.
The financial contributions for Section 106 is all very fine, but I haven't seen any pound notes yet. So I have no idea whether they're significant or not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Our next speaker then is Kim Harden.
Thank you. I'm Kim Harden. I'm a resident along New Street. I would like to point out that the North Dorset Local Plan Part 1 confirms development outside the four main towns will be strictly controlled with an emphasis on meeting local and essential needs. The document before you confirms that this proposal is contrary to Policy 20, as the site is outside the settlement boundary for Marnell and is therefore not specifically for essential rural needs. As the application site is outside the settlement boundary, it's a rural exception site under Policy 9, which confirms that the rural exception affordable housing schemes will only be permitted if a local need for rural exception affordable housing can be demonstrated. Dorset Council's January 2022 Affordable Housing Need Refresh Register confirms there's a local need for 19 households for Marnell. The Housing Land Supply Report of January 22 confirms that there is a deliverable supply of 32 homes from Marnell permissions and at least 24 more affordable housing units having been secured under a Section 106 agreement on the Burton Street development granted in September 2020. Therefore, the local need is already covered by the previous permissions, and Policy 9 should prevent the development outside the settlement boundary and the encroachment into the countryside. This alone should be sufficient for this application to be refused. Section 9 of the National Planning Policy Framework states that significant development should be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable. Marnell has 2 village shops, which are both excellent for basic requirements, but are not sufficient for a weekly family shop. This requires car travel to at least one of the nearby towns, as bus travel is limited. The document says that the site will have good pedestrian links. This is not correct. Walking to the local village shops is problematic due to the lack of pavements in sections of New Street, and none at all along Sackmore Lane or Burton Street. This requires pedestrians to walk in the roads in a significant number of places, particularly if walking to the post office. This is dangerous and causes problems for mothers with young children, students, neurodivergent people, people with other invisible and/or visible disabilities, and those using disability motor scooters. Even where payments do exist, these are narrow and are often blocked by waste bins, cars, etc. In truth, many, including myself, use the car to get to the post office rather than walking. The residents of this application site will be no different and will be reliant.
Ask you to conclude. Your time is almost up.
I'm just coming to the end.
Thank you very much.
Will be reliant on the private car to access sufficient services, facilities, and employment. And therefore, the development will not be a sustainable one. This is in direct conflict with Dorset Council policy and national policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Next, we hear from Stephen Bainbridge for the agent. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair and Councillors. My name is Stephen Bainbridge, Associate Director at Chapman Lilly Planning, Chartered Member of the Royal Town Planning Institute, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of the applicant and landowner, asking you to follow your officer's recommendation and approve this planning application for up to 39 dwellings on land off Butts Close, which is delivering 50% affordable housing on site along with extensive green space. The NPPF tells us that small and medium sites can make an important contribution to meeting housing requirement of an area and are often built out relatively quickly. This planning application follows a relatively recent planning permission on land north of Burton Street, Marnhull, it too being permissible against a prevailing development plan situation. I understand that pre-application discussions are progressing apace for that development, with an expectation of it being taken forward by either Fries or Fries and Hammonds, both eminent high-quality local developers. This provides you with a degree of comfort that my client, a long-time resident of good standing, tends to deliver quality places for Marnhull's future. You'll be keenly aware of the Council's recent housing supply position and the current housing delivery position, both in turn triggering the presumption in favour of sustainable development. In that context, we're in agreement with your planning officer that this proposal can be supported in policy terms as sustainable development, which benefits from that presumption. In this case, we can go beyond that rather dry point and make note that unlike many speculative proposals that you've seen, this applicant is proposing more affordable housing than required. This is because he is keen to support the viability of the village in the longer term, being a local resident himself. On other matters, our various technical assessments have all been concluded satisfactorily and have been supported by specialist officers in the council and statutory consultees. Highways being a good example, because highways and transport can often be contentious matters locally, but Dorset highways are quite clear that trip generation from the development, even in peak periods, would have a negligible impact on the local road network. The master plan shows a road layout which can fully embrace the principles in Manual for Streets, that the submitted transport assessment was robust. Responding to other matters raised locally, the access has been provided in detail in this application and has the support of Dorset Highways. The proposal will contribute to an acknowledged housing delivery need in the area. The contribution this proposal will make towards increasing patronage of local services and facilities will be a positive outcome. By way of an update to your committee report, somewhat late in the process, Dorset Natural Environment team requested additional provisions from the planning application. The applicant quickly and happily acceded to this request. Therefore, biodiversity issues on this proposal are concluded. In conclusion, this planning application will deliver high-quality local market and affordable housing. The necessary background surveys and studies have been done. The application before you has the support of your planning officers. I respectfully ask you to grant planning permission subject to finalising the legal agreement. We can then get that document signed off and get those much needed marketed and affordable homes delivered. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Good. Members, I will go around the room now and ask you if you have any questions for clarification. Before I do that, Verity, or Steve, do you want to comment on anything that you've heard from the public so far, or not? No, that's a little bit good, thank you. So I will go around, and this is just for points for clarification, and then we'll move on to the discussion first. So, Councillor Hall, do you have any questions, please?
I have a comment which has got two questions within it.
Yes, go on then.
Councillor Matt Hall from Sherborne, can we have, please, up on screen the site access map? Okay, having spent too much time over the last fortnight studying the manual for streets, I can't help but feel that this is a poor design. 6.11, 6.12 and 6.13 of it clearly states that it must be an inclusive design, and I'm struggling to see how having that path so close to the junction can be deceived or can be conceived as being an inclusive design when you're talking about people who potentially have got mobility issues, and you're right next to a road junction there, and you're right on the bend, and you've got cars coming in and out.
Councillor Hall,
I'm getting to the question.
All right, yes.
I also can't see any signs on there for allowance for bicycles. Am I missing something? Also, if I may, 6.3.12 says that pedestrian desire line should be as straight as possible. So again, I'm not quite sure why that footpath is so close to that junction, when in my opinion, it should be further down the road. And therefore, I would appreciate the highways interpretation of this, please.
Yes, please.
You, Chair.
Steve, yes.
Councillor, can I just clarify, when you talk about the footpath, do you mean the one immediately to the north on the diagram that we see there?
No, the one on the left.
The one on the left. Well, what you can see there is it's got a footway with tactile crossing provision, which is obviously suitable for people with mobility impairments. The layout itself has been passed through to our development team, who've assessed it and said it's suitable for public adoption under Section 278 of the Highways Act. And part of that that procedure, if you like, is the road safety audit. They carry out a stage 1 road safety audit, which looks at these issues. It's past that. When it comes to the Section 278, they'll be looking at a stage 2 and a stage 3, which we'll look at more detail. We've got a difficult situation here with regards to the alignment of the highway, and the Manual for Streets does provide guidance, and it is strictly that guidance. In the ideal world, yes, we'd have straight desire lines. What we've got here is where we believe that people should be able to cross safely and that they want to cross safely there. And it might look quite a distance on that plan, but the reality is it's only, 2 metres, 3 metres below the actual tangent point at the centre of the junction. So we're confident that it does tick boxes with regards to inclusive mobility and the Equalities Act. We feel that it accords with the guidance provided by Manual for Streets. And I could certainly say to you, we haven't got grounds to recommend a refusal with regards to those particular issues. I've answered your questions. Maybe not to your satisfaction, but they're the answers that we have as a highway authority.
Cyclists.
Oh, cyclists. Well, cyclists will be on highway. The Manual for Streets does allow for low-speed environments, and the illustrative layout you saw there, as the agent indicated, we are of the opinion that it complies with the guidance of Manual for Streets, but it would need to be a low-speed environment, i.e. vehicle speeds would be less than 20 miles per hour. As such, it's suitable for use by cyclists. Again, when they're coming off the main road in Marnhull and then coming down Butts Close, we'd anticipate it's a low traffic speed area. We'd hope the drivers are driving with due care and attention and looking out for cyclists. And to be fair, there are no other cycle lanes or provisions in Marnhull. So it would be out of place to try and put something particularly for this, but I can assure you this will be safe for all road users.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hall. You might want to return to your reservation about highways in the debate. Councillor Heatley, do you have a question?
I'm Councillor Heatley from Rodwell and Wyke in Weymouth. I wonder, and this is a funny sort of question, but do we have a picture, a map of that, but in its wider context. Because I am concerned about the wiggliness of Butt Lane combined with the rest of the development.
Yes. Can we have a picture of Wiggly Butts Lane, please? Does that help?
Place for me where a vehicle would go to get in, because I found it a bit difficult to interpret that picture. Which more?
So that is the access point for cars there,
Yeah.
and they would,
Right, but how would they have got into Butt Lane?
oh, so this is New Street up here.
There's the main road, right.
That's the main road. And then that turns into Butts Close. And then Butts Close winds round. And then the access is off Butts Close.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Good.
Interpreting the picture.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Councillor Pothcary, do you have a question?
Councillor Val Pothcary Gillingham. It's a very small matter. I was just curious, actually. The officer stated that no consultees were against the proposal, and I understood that the parish council was a consultee.
Yes. Was that can you just tidy that up for us?
Yes, apologies. So what I meant by that was internal consultees, okay. So people working for Dorset Council.
Thank you. No, clarification.
No, it's very helpful to have that clear for anybody listening. Councillor Jones, do you have a question?
Only a very quick one, and it's an assumption really. Carol Jones, Sturminster Newton. I'm assuming that Marnhall don't have a neighbourhood plan. Is that correct?
No, they don't. No.
That carries, obviously, there is no weight to that at all.
No.
Can you just go back on one of the gentlemen was speaking about policy 9, how that impacts? Could you just quickly reiterate policy 9 and what that actually means?
Yes, let me just.
Yes. Yeah. Hannah, would you like to? Thank you. Hannah Smith, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the point was made about this being an exception site, which is an affordable exception site, which would normally be brought forward as 100% affordable housing. But this development isn't being brought forward as an exception site. It's a mixed scheme with different tenures of open market and affordable, on the basis of the fact that we don't have delivery in this area and the presumption. So we're not judging this application under the exception site policies, because it would fail that, because it's a general sort of market housing scheme with 50% affordable housing. So that policy isn't relevant to this. What is relevant is the other policies that were raised, which is policy 20, our spatial strategy, which does say that development should be inside settlement boundaries, but of course that's tempered by the fact that we don't have delivery, and reduced weight needs to be attached to our housing policy 6 and the distribution of dwellings. So I think the policy context is there is a conflict there, but there needs to be demonstrable harm arising from this scheme that we can cite to resist it. And we have to look at the overall benefits, which is dwellings towards our delivery, 50% affordable housing, and no other harm that's been identified, including with heritage.
That's very helpful, Hannah. Thank you very much. Councillor Fry, do you have any question?
Please, a couple. When is a settlement boundary not a boundary?
I'm not sure that's a technical question.
Yes. Settlement boundary, but then we're going outside the settlement boundary.
I think that question's just been explained. It's in the context of the 5-year housing land supply, and we have only 69% of housing delivery numbers, so we're in the tilted balance.
But there's still a settlement boundary, is
there? Yes, there is still a settlement boundary, but that's one of the things we will discuss today, whether or not we are satisfied that it's appropriate to be building this development out with the settlement boundary. That's one of the key questions today.
I mean, you said just now about it would fail certain housing.
Yes, so that you're correct. We do have settlement boundaries, and the policy says that development should be located within settlement boundaries. However, in a situation where you either don't have a 5-year housing land supply or the delivery test is failed, we need to apply the presumption. So those policies that we would be able to attach full weight to attract less weight in the overall planning balance. And this is the approach we've been taking around the whole former North Dorset district area, to try to ensure that in more sustainable locations, such as the larger villages where there are settlement boundaries, we have appropriate growth where there isn't harm just outside settlement boundaries, to try to ensure that we do get that delivery, so we can get back to the position where we can say no to anything outside of settlement boundaries and have that reverting to the local plan and applying the plan as we want to. We're not, unfortunately, in that position right now, but we're working towards it, and that's actually shows up in our 5-year housing land supply situation, which is now over 5 years. The development still needs to come forward to help with our delivery, and then we will get to a point, eventually where we have 5-year housing land supply and delivery. So we do need to look outside settlement boundaries, is what I'm trying to say at this point in time, to try to ensure that we are delivering the growth that we need in our area.
Yes, so thank you. No more questions, then we can now. I will now throw the meeting over to debate and discussion. And as Hannah said, the matter before us today is that we have heard from our officers very considerable public benefits that would arise from this scheme. We have also heard from the parish council and a member of the local community, the view that in fact this site is not sustainable, and that the local need for housing, both market and affordable, is in the view of the parish council already met. So that's what we're here to weigh up. As Hannah said, the demonstrable harm versus the clear public benefits. Would anyone like to start off with yes, Councillor Jones?
Whilst I feel for the residents, I'm also, at the weekend, there were an awful lot of comments through the papers, through the Sunday Times, about older people saying we don't want any more houses, and younger people saying, oh God, we're desperate for houses. And actually that looks like it's a good scheme, and we don't often get 50% affordable given to us with a leap and a lap. So very sorry, local Marnhall people, but I think this is a good scheme, and I am for it. I can't see any real problems. I think the access is good. Got a brilliant pharmacy in Barnhall, much better than the one in Sturminster, so they're all right there. And quite frankly, most of us in this area have to go to Gillingham or Blandford for a major supermarket anyway. It would be nice to see that there were pavements that they could access, but we've all got those in our areas. We are all in the same situation, and perhaps that little area might be, maybe perhaps in the future that could be looked at a 20-mile-an-hour zone coming through to that area, but it's a good scheme.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to comment? Yes, Councillor Pride.
Someone was raised about access for people walking from the site to the shops and pharmacy, and that there were no pavements in Marnhall or accessibility. Can somebody comment on that, please?
Yes, Steve, yes.
Well, is there a map that we can talk through, Steve, to show us the access, how people would get there?
Well, might be useful.
Yes.
From the site, Councillor, you'd be crossing the road as you saw. You can walk up the left-hand side. Then the footway basically takes you through onto the main road itself. And there's footway provision on both sides, to the left to the store, to the right to the school. They're 1.8 metre footways, old school 6 foot if you like. Obviously, like any rural village, then there are parts of Marnhall that don't have footways. I think that if you were trying to walk from here across to I think it's Robin Hill stores, the post office, you'd probably struggle there to find a road that's got a footway, a continuous footway there. But a lot of these are low speed environments. I think part of the issue that the gentleman from Marnhall Parish Council mentioned was issues outside of the school. I think the issue outside the school is where parents indiscriminately park along there. But what it does do is slow vehicle speeds down and makes it a safer environment for people on the footways. At the end of the day, if we're looking at this development on its own, I think in the AM peak, we were looking at 3 pedestrian movements being generated by it. So to answer your question, Councillor, you can walk from this site into parts of Marnhall. You can go to a local store if you like. the remainder of the settlement is like any rural village. There are places with footways and places without. And one would hope that drivers would exercise care and caution, but we're all reliant on drivers, aren't we? Well, indeed. So hopefully that's answered your question.
Thank you. Councillor Penfold, do you want to
Thanks
make
very
a
much.
comment? Yes.
Councillor Mary Penfold, representing the Epminster ward. Could I just ask a question, a point of clarification more, really, about the possible effects of runoff? Because I see that we've got a line of trees, so that would address that issue on that side. Are we content with that?
Thank you. So the site is within flood zone 1.
Yes.
It's at very low risk of fluvial surface water and groundwater flooding. A flood risk assessment and drainage strategy have been submitted, which looks to deal with surface water runoff in a sustainable way. The levels of runoff from the site will actually mimic the existing levels. So there's not considered to be an increase in surface water runoff through this development.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Anybody else want to comment, or I'll go back to Councillor Fry? Yes, I saw Councillor Pothecry's hand next and then Councillor Heatley.
It is just general comments. I have to say, it's good to see the reduction to 39 dwellings as against the previous consideration. I have a problem with this, basically. Marnell is a village, and I know it's quite a large village, actually, but it is a village. There is lots of areas with no pavement at all, which is fine, you know, if you haven't got a lot of pedestrians, but I don't think it's very sustainable at all, frankly. There's no employment land anywhere unless you're a farmer. You know, people could move here, but they still have to go out to find employment. So there's no industrial land anywhere, as far as I know. I understand we've got the tilted balance, and I can't see a good reason or a strong enough, robust reason to turn it down. But I'm really not happy. I think the Chipple Lane, for instance, I know how wet that gets. It does flood, and that's at the bottom of that hill. One way or another, it floods already without the addition of the extra houses. What else do I think? I just have real problems with unsustainability. I'm just not happy with it, actually, but I don't think I can find good enough reason to vote against it.
Right, okay, Councillor Heatley.
Yes, thank you. I think the thing that sounded most like demonstrable harm to me were the comments that came from Marnell Parish Council about the effects on the infrastructure. Mr. Turner talked about 139 additional dwellings cumulatively. This is 39 dwellings. I'd guess we're probably only supposed to think about the 39 when we're doing this this application.
I'm going to keep talking. I was going to get a steer on that, because I do think the cumulative impact in Marnell has to be, we have to discuss that.
Well, that's I'm trying to decide whether we're allowed to go to the wider.
Yes, Hannah, could you help us with this? Because
it's a good point. There's no cap on development numbers, so there's not a figure that you get to and you've had enough development.
Yes.
We have tried to run arguments unsuccessfully around Stallbridge, for instance, where we've said it's had too much growth. We haven't had, and I think on the last appeal, the inspector said there may well be a tipping point, but this is not it. So I think if you're going down that route, you have to have very clear evidence of, you know, how are the services, you know, it's okay to say there's insufficient services, but you need more evidence than that to defend that appeal. There definitely will be a tipping point, because quite clearly 1,000 houses here would not be sustainable development. But I think officer's opinion is we haven't reached that tipping point on this application cumulatively.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Carry on.
That's exactly the point.
Yes. One does slightly wonder when the tipping point would be met.
Well, exactly.
Yes, but yes, clearly not. The advice is that this is not it. So thank you. Does Councillor Fry?
So Councillor, sorry, Dorset West, I was going to pick up on that again, because at what point do you have the tipping point? We've heard the comment that there's already a lot of houses, and they've been told that the development in Burton Road, Burton Street was the last one. Where do you stop? Where is it get? And what the members of the public don't realise, you've got very limited criteria on what we can refuse or approve, particularly refuse on. Our hands are tied, and no local plan, 5-year land supply, the lack of, do tie our hands even more.
Yeah.
No neighbourhood plans.
Yes, yes, you are right. Does anybody else want to make any comment? Yes, please, Councillor Hall.
I'll just make the following comments. I think actually as a layout and design for the number of houses and achieving the 50% affordable, and as Councillor Jones mentioned, a significant amount of green space. I think in many respects it should be commended. However, I understand the issues about where is that tipping point, but I really don't see this as a truly sustainable location. For myself, this is asking people to move to an area where they are going to be, I would say, 99% reliant on a motor vehicle of some form, shape or variety, because there just isn't the access to things. I understand our highways officer's comment, and he and his team are qualified, and I'm only nearly qualified, but I don't consider that to be an acceptable access. And personally, I can't vote for this, but I can't give you enough reasons, like my colleagues, to refuse it. But I am not comfortable with this. It just does not sit right with me.
Okay, but you're not at this point proposing refusal, because you wouldn't have. Before, okay, I will just probe that a bit further, because I'm sensing a mood in the meeting here, and I'm aware of your point, Councillor Jones. Members, Hannah and Virgin members, are struggling here with two things: the sustainability of this location. I haven't picked up from you that we would have a very robust, a very defendable position if we objected to this on grounds of sustainability. Go, whichever of you, yeah.
Summarises it nicely, Chair.
Yes.
I think that's correct, because we have a spatial strategy that does say that some development is acceptable in locations where there's settlement boundaries, which is the main towns and the larger villages. They've purposely been included because they do have a level of service, albeit not the same as a town. They're lower down in the hierarchy, but they're not a location such as our smaller villages without settlement boundaries, where we wouldn't be directing any growth. So I think purely on the sustainability term, I think it would be difficult. I think it doesn't set a precedent, Burton Street, but we have been looking outside settlements, Charter Marshall, other similar villages, to try to meet our delivery requirements. So I completely understand that it doesn't have everything that you need completely in terms of a contained settlement, but it does have a higher level of services. We've heard from people with that local knowledge of what's there. It does have a level of services that does make it more sustainable than a lot of locations in the area. So yes, I think that would be tricky on its own.
That's our advice there, I think. Yes, and the access you were. Yes, okay.
Councillor, what's the flood situation like there in that area?
Floods.
I know the site in Burton Street floods used to flood before.
Yes.
Quite regularly.
Could we just be reassured about flooding, please, Verity?
Yes. So the site is within flood zone 1, so it's low risk for flooding from surface water, groundwater, fluvial water. There is a flood risk assessment which looks at that in detail. Drainage strategy also, which looks to deal with any runoff in a sustainable way whilst minimising the flood risk. But I don't think the development will result in a significant flood risk.
Is it different there than Burton Street?
I don't know. what flood zone Burton Street is in, but this one is within flood zone 1.
Members, we've had a good discussion of this. I think we need to bring this to a resolution. I need somebody to make a proposal. Carol, Councillor Jones.
I think that it's a good scheme. I'm sorry, I do.
Don't
There's lots of
apologise.
green space, so I will propose the motion, and if it gets turned down, then it gets turned down, but I will propose it.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that? Yes. Yes, in accordance with the updated recommendations. Yes, thank you, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Penfold. Right, I have had a proposer and a seconder. If we could get the recommendations that we're voting up on the screen, because that can be helpful for the members of the public, that's lovely. Could I have a show of hands then? All those in favour of supporting this application, could you please raise your hands? 1, 2, 3. All those against? That's 3 and 3. Yes, absolutely. That leaves me to settle this with my vote. And while I'm very, very sympathetic to the view that it's not a sustainable location, and very, very sympathetic to the view that Marnell has taken, as some of us would say, its fair share, I haven't heard anything here that would be sufficient grounds to refuse it, so I will support it. But that's carried. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we could have a brief break now, or we could press on. Does anyone feel the need to break, or you're happy to press on? We have only one more item before us. Press on. Thank you very much. Good. We will then press on. But I'll just keep burbling on here while a few members of the public leave, because they're making background noise, which is fine.
Goes on in Gillingham. It's very, very different. On the left. Like sitting there. Just keep on.
That's a mistake of the day. Yeah.
Yes, which would make life so much easier, wouldn't it?
It's good.
You've got your allocations, get
Right.
on with it, don't come back with another.
When we're ready, we will resume. Sorry, Ross, take your time. I don't mean to rush you. Yes. Good. We're ready now to move on to agenda item 7, which is land at North Honeymead Field, Northfield, Sturmston, Newton. And this is an application of reserved matters for appearance, landscaping, layout and scale in relation to an outline approval that was given in 2018. We will start straight off, then I will ask Ross Callaghan to give us your presentation when you're ready. Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Can I first draw members' attention to the update sheet? This makes corrections to the approved plans list for the dwellings, and also includes an additional response from the Council's flood risk management team. It clarifies that the reserved matters application doesn't seek to discharge the outline conditions 10 and 11, which still require pre-commencement approval of a surface water management scheme, along with maintenance and management. So on this basis, the flood risk management team have raised no objection, although the revised arrangement will remain subject to that pre-commencement approval as set out in the outline conditions. So we have a reserved matters application to consider appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, following outline planning permission for 114 dwellings at the site known as North Honeymead Field here in Sturmston, Newton.
So this is an aerial photo of the site that includes the surrounding built development and landscape. So the site is marked in red, and the outline approval permits vehicular access off Northfields on the south towards the southeastern corner. There is an existing highway route from Manston Road over on the east over to Bath Road further to the west, which is the B3092. As you can see, to the south and east, there's modern residential development constructed within the last 30 years or so. To the west, we have Sturminster United Football Club with the Sturfit Leisure Centre building to its south. Further west is the town's high school and its sports fields further north. And there's also agricultural land to the north. And also of note, while the site is undeveloped, it is now within the revised settlement boundary as revised by the neighbourhood plan. So here is the outline approved parameter plan, which includes the buffer zones surrounding the site. We've also got footpath links east and west through the site. We've got public open space and green infrastructure. So this secures 3 footpath links to the east towards an existing permissive footpath, which runs north-south through an off-site woodland strip, so just along the edge of the eastern boundary, along with footpath links westwards towards the leisure centre to facilitate pedestrian access. I've provided some photos of the site and its boundaries. So top left is the view eastwards from the B3092 Bath Road. So that's across the high school playing fields. So the development will be screened within that existing tree line in the background. And you can also see existing views of the town edge as well. The top right photo is the permissive footpath that runs through the woodland strip along the eastern boundary. Bottom left is the view into the site facing southwest from a gap within that permissive path tree line. And this is towards the rear elevations and gardens of the Northfields dwellings. And bottom right is the northern wooded edge of the site, which will be retained and utilised as the open space, and that's taken from further north along the permissive path, looking back towards the development. So here's the location plan of the site, which includes that northern edge, just highlighted in the black line to the north, along with the path to the east. And you can also see the Northfields dwellings to the south. The outline approved mini roundabouts to serve the site access has been changed to a priority junction as approved under the section 73 variation of the plan there at the bottom right. So these photos show the existing context along Northfields. So top left, you have the junction with Honeymead Lane with the site and its access location in the background. Top right is just taken closer to the site, further within the Northfields highway. Bottom left shows the nearest dwelling to the site access, that's number 2 Northfields. And bottom right is the Northfields development further along the south, which is, as you can see, is fairly high density and includes some 3-storey dwellings. So this is the neighbourhood plan allocation for the site, which requires the following design approach. Sorry, I can't quite read that text, but it does require a mix of housing, more families, an area of public open space extending to the wider countryside, no 2.5-storey or taller buildings on the higher ground to the west, or close to the countryside edge, a landscape recreational trail around the northern edge linking to the leisure centre with roads leading to this trail and further landscaping to soften its edge, sufficient parking conveniently located to the dwellings they serve, and a permeable layout that facilitates safe pedestrian movement. And here's the proposed reserved matters layout. So SUDS features are proposed along the eastern boundary, as this is the lowest part of the site. The proposed LEAP facility is to the northeast corner, right in the northeast. There is an existing neighbourhood play facility to the southeast on the other side of the tree belt, and that's in the neighbouring development of Shiverick Close. Just here are some further photos of the neighbouring Northfields re-elevations and gardens. So top left, you can it shows number 2 Northfields as having no opening on the side elevation, which is nearest to proposed development. Top right, the projecting terrace dwelling at the end, number 26, has the closest rear-to-rear proximity of about 18 metres, but is considered sufficiently mitigated by the angled positioning of the proposed 2-storey windows and the deciduous planting within its garden also somewhat assists in screening views. The bottom photos show number 11 Northfields, which is a flat over garage unit with only high level roof lights on the rear elevation. So this site plan includes the proposed affordable housing. Apologies, the marking's not particularly clear on this plan, but we do have 2 semi-detached dwellings on the western end. We have a further 4 semi-detached affordable dwellings on the southern side of the Spine Road, and further east towards the central junction. We have 2 apartment buildings for affordable 1 and 2 bed units, and that's near a proposed lap facility. And then we have a couple of further affordable housing dwellings just further north along that secondary route towards the northern fringe. And here are some proposed street scenes, and these are to show the affordable units. And on the top, the 2 pair of semi-detached dwellings with the front dormers are the affordable units, and they are on the southern side of the Spine Road, highlighted red. And then the street scene below is the other 2 affordable units, and you can see that their design is completely identical to the proposed open market units to the right. And these are the street scene plans for the rest of the development. So we have detached dwellings along the woodland and countryside edges to the north and to the east. The middle street scene, including the higher 3-storey apartments there, is located along the northern side of the Spine Road. And the smaller street scenes at the bottom should show how now the height transition between the dwellings and the apartments is now more gradual and considered acceptable. So, the applicant has provided some CGI colour images to show the key character zones to help provide a walkthrough of the site. So this is the entrance green character zone, which creates a sense of arrival and includes a footpath link to the east, and with dwellings providing natural surveillance of the open space. Next, we have the Parkland Villas character zone, which is along the eastern wooded edge, and this also contains detached dwellings But as you can see, they would have buff brink and some pale colour render to provide a distinctive and attractive edge facing this open space. This is the central green character zone, where the affordable flats are provided adjacent to the lap facility sited in between. There's a use of some grey effect timber cladding to add legibility to this area, and the open space flanked by the higher buildings provides a focal point to aid navigation. And here's the final Woodland Walk character zone at the north of the site on the development edge facing the tree belt. And this comprises detached dwellings with a rural and informal appearance, with red brick and tile hanging considered appropriate for this countryside edge location. This is the proposed landscaping plan, which is also supported by a landscape and ecological management plan, which was amended to comply with the comments of Dorset Wildlife Trust. The landscaping has also been amended to address the comments of Dorset Council's landscape architect. The inset CGI and colour site plan below shows where additional street trees are now proposed along the primary spine route, and this provides a clear hierarchy of streets. And additional planting is also proposed along the northern woodland edge. And here's the proposed LEAP facility on the northeast corner of the site, which now includes retention of some mature trees within it, and would provide a sufficient amount of play facilities. Here is the proposed lap facility within the middle of the site, adjacent to the affordable flats, and also includes appropriate facilities and park benches. So all material considerations are outlined in the officer's report, and the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions as outlined. An amended plans condition as well. And I've also noticed that the Council's environmental health officer has recommended construction hours on page 54, but unfortunately it was missed out on the conditions list, so we may need to consider whether that should be added as an additional condition. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Steve, would you like to make your presentation now about the highways aspects of this, please?
Thank you. The Highway Authority obviously has accepted, as you have, the principal development here with regards to traffic impact. So we're looking primarily at the actual layout you can see before you there. The other point that the case officer mentioned was that originally it was approved with a mini roundabout access, but fortunately they've now going to provide us with a priority junction. Never really liked the mini roundabout in the first place, if I'm honest. So this is a marked improvement. If you just go to the layout, please, Ross, because the applicant has indicated they're only going to offer the north-south spine road to us for public adoption. So as you can see where the road goes into the site, deflects or wiggles to the left and then round northwards, that area will be ours. The area where, so that area there. The remainder of the site, the shared surfaces off the spine road and the road which runs east-west, we believe will be retained as a private scheme. This obviously means that it will be the responsibility of housing association, the developer, residents, housing company, etc., to maintain. It won't be subject to the council to maintain it. That said, the application is supported by a full swept path analysis for the whole site, which shows that a refuse vehicle can access the site freely and access all bin collection points. As an estate layout, we're confident and happy that it actually conforms with the guidance of the dreaded manual for streets with regards to providing a low speed layout. There's sufficient deflection and a number of plateaus at junctions. For example, the main junction that we saw a photo of, when you go further up the north-south spine road, there's another junction with a plateau. So raised tables are being employed to actually keep vehicle speeds low, to make it safe for all road users. Parking's been mentioned. Well, car parking fully complies with the council's guidance for this. It's a mix of garage spaces, allocated spaces, carports particularly, which we're very keen on because people don't tend to store valuable items in carports, so they're utilised for cars. There are identified visitor parking spaces, and as you can see, there's quite a wide expanse of road which could be utilised for on-street car parking in safe positions. Cycle parking is to be provided within the curtilage of each plot. Bike stores will be provided for the apartments or the flats which are on the layout. So consequently, Chair, bearing all the above said in mind, we've got no objection to the proposal.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. We have just one speaker to hear from on this occasion. That's Brett Spiller for the applicant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. You've had a very comprehensive presentation there, so thank you to Mr. Callaghan and Mr. Savage. I will keep it very short as a result, and hopefully a number of you may have seen the information that we sent around as well. I think the key to that is Bellway Homes' commitment and embracing of the vision set out within the Sturminster Newton neighbourhood plan. So there's a very specific policy relating to this site and some of the aspirations from the local community. A number of those have been relayed already to you. One other that I will just point out is that the plans there behind us is pedestrian permeability and trying to create very much a positive edge to the settlement. So that's very much harnessing the existing woodland to the north of the site, but also creating this area of open space along the eastern edge of the site as well. And there are a number of footpaths that come off of that as well to connect to the surrounding tracks there as well. So at its heart, we very much sought to ensure that there's good pedestrian links throughout the development and to the surrounding area. This all started with a pre-application or request for pre-application advice. So hopefully we got off on a good footing. And during the course of the application, we have made a number of refinements in response to the comments and feedback we've had from stakeholders. I'm very grateful for those because I think those refinements have really enhanced the scheme. And we've got it to a stage where it's as good a possible environment that we can get. Some really distinct character areas has been shown on the CGIs, and very much a high quality public realm. So hopefully a place that future residents will come to enjoy and cherish. I think that's all I want to say, Chair. So
thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, we have, as was just said, we've had a very dense and very, very informative presentation. There's a lot to take in. So I will go around the room once again and ask members if you have any questions. This is questions for clarification, then we'll move on to debate later. Councillor Jones, as the local member, questions?
Roger, Sturminster Newton. Can I just get clarification on lighting on the footpaths that are going around the wooded areas? Is there going to be, I just got a bit confused on that area. That's just one. And the other, in the report, it talks about having to discuss areas for charging points for electric vehicles. Is that something we can definitely tie in? And if so, where, how, and how many?
Thank you,
yes.
Councillor.
Yeah. Oh, and the only other, I'm just getting my head around why the Spine Road is going to be adopted, which is great, but why the other bits aren't. And is that really an issue, or it just seemed a little bit strange? That's all.
Yes, let's take should we take the transport question first? Because I think there are lots of, just explain why is that, and should it concern us, Steve?
No, it shouldn't concern you. As you're well aware, we cannot force developers or applicants to offer highway for dedication to us. We've got minimum criteria, class road widths and footway widths and the like, and lighting criteria, which we encourage all developers to adhere to, but it's up to them whether they choose to offer it to us. The indication we've initially had from them is they only wish to offer us the north-south Spine Road. Now, that's their prerogative. They may well come back to us at a later date and say, actually, they're going to offer other areas to us. We don't tend to adopt areas which don't have sufficient public utilities. So a lot of the shared space arrangements, cul-de-sacs and the like, be there. We probably wouldn't want as a public highway as such. But the prerogative basically, council, is it rests with them. If they came back to us and said, well, actually, we'd like to enter into a section 38, then we would consider it. There may be some minor tweaks to the layout which are required, but I would say that what you see there is a safe layout. It takes into account the Equalities Act, inclusive mobility, and as such, we're supportive of the layout as a whole.
Thank you. I think it would be fair to say it's not unusual that not all the roads in a layout such as this would be adopted.
That's correct, and we've all probably seen layouts where none of it's been offered for adoption.
Yes, okay.
But it often is at a later date.
Yeah, that's very reassuring. Your other moving on to the other two questions, then on the lighting on the footways.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, subject to an outline condition 14. Which requires, prior to occupation, a lighting strategy to reduce the use of artificial light sources in accordance with UK guidance on protecting bats. So that needs to be submitted to the local authority and agreed in writing. And then the development the lighting must be carried out in accordance with that scheme. So it's something
we take into consideration safety of pedestrians along the footpath at night, though, don't we? Because that's important.
Yeah. I think that if you see from the site plan, the design also utilises natural surveillance in terms of where the detached dwellings are positioned to face the footpaths. I think low-level lighting may be acceptable along the paths, but we also have this outline condition that will restrict the level and intensity for ecological reasons. So we can strike the best balance possible under that condition.
Happy with that? And your charging point?
The charging points are proposed to be secured under the current reserved matters application under condition 6 in the report, and that's on page 60. So a scheme to show the the plug locations needs to be submitted to the local planning authority before any occupation of.
Would those be shared amongst all the residents there, or are we're not talking one charging point per dwelling, are we? We're talking about communal charging points, are we?
I think the preference may be for the locations to be within plots, and we need to.
Or communal use, or for single.
Well, for private
houses.
use, yeah.
But not all houses.
We need to consider.
Subject to the scheme being submitted, so there'd be details through the scheme. So a suitable scheme would have to be submitted to us for approval.
Okay.
The scope of the scheme isn't set out at this point, so it doesn't specify every unit would have to have charging points. We'd normally ask for a proportion of them, normally.
Can we specify that proportion, or what would you recommend in terms of proportion of charging points? Sorry, I know I'm.
No, carry on. No, there's a lot of nodding around the room. How far can we take that in terms of at this point?
Really good question.
Yes.
It's not formally set out in our adopted policy at the moment, but it's definitely a direction of travel.
Yes.
In the new plan. So how far we go for it, I mean, is not actually set out at the moment in policy. So I think Ross has done the best in terms of trying to get a condition there. If you set an arbitrary amount on there through the condition, then they'd have to comply with that. I think on other schemes we've asked for, I'm trying to recall how much we've had previously.
Is it possible to just put the infrastructure in behind the system to make sure it's all there for all houses? Because I appreciate the systems are changing all the time.
I think that's provided the parking spaces can be serviced for the electric charging point. So I don't know if that's possible for every single one. We could have an at least figure, so at least.
If we could, and could we condition that there's a communal charging point by the blocks of apartments, by blocks of flats, so that at least they have access jointly to a charging point?
Yes, can I bring Steve? No, don't apologise. Can I bring Steve in?
I might be able to help, Chair, because I had another developer ask me this question today, whether they had to provide the actual plugs,
yes,
if you like, or the infrastructure behind. And it was drawn to my attention from one of our transport policy planners that the building regulation approved document S came in December of 2021, which we apparently adopted by June of this year,
right,
which requires EV charging points for, I think it's literally every dwelling.
right.
So I think there's a mechanism outside planning which particularly would cover this element.
Yes.
But having said that, my understanding is that if we have a condition with a scheme, we can agree the infrastructure and the appropriate scheme, because the issue here is, of course, that most electric vehicles have different charging mechanisms or points.
Yes.
So it's sort of a belt and braces approach. The condition covers it, but building regs is the fallback, which sort of secures everything for us, I would have thought.
Does that satisfy you, or do you want
Sort of. I'm looking at the document here. There is, as set out in Officer Report, ample resident and visitor car parking, blah, blah, with scope for on-plot electric charging points. If we can condition that for one charging point to be accessed by the flats, and whether it's just the infrastructure or full charging points per dwelling, I'd be really, really happy.
Yes, can we, could we do that, as you say, Hannah, as an at least condition?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to have, on the communal flats, it's how would that be paid, how would that be serviced? Because I think the problem is,
yes,
if it's communal, how,
yes,
that's a bit different from putting it in plot per dwelling. Yeah. I think we could maybe say that if it's going to be built in by building regulations, that each dwelling should be serviced under the scheme.
Yes.
Through that condition, but I'm not sure about communal ones. I think that would be probably beyond our policy.
I understand your point.
It might be something that's built in through building regs that has to be built into the scheme anyway for the.
Okay, can we amend condition 6 that we are saying that we would wish to see the infrastructure, at least the infrastructure in place for every dwelling, and that we're basically wanting our officers, when they come to sign off this scheme, to look very hard at what you're going to do about so we're not saying what they have to do about the flats, but we're putting a marker down that we're expecting to see some creative thinking about the flat. Would that satisfy everybody? Right, while we're carrying on with questions, I'll let Hannah put that into a sensible planning condition, and we'll come back to it. Any more questions, Councillor James? Councillor Fry.
Can we see what renewables are going in, solar or ground source heating? What are these? How are these going to be heated?
Good question. Renewables, please, Ross. Other than our new
there's solar panels on every property and all, ground source heating everywhere. Thank you. Perfect.
There's no specific renewable technology proposed under the application. Design and access statement does outline some sustainability measures, which is summarised, I think, in section 14 of the report. So,
it seems then, if that's the case, then this application, as much as I like it, is behind the times, it's behind the curve.
Well, the site does benefit from outline planning permission, and
that road has moved on considerably.
Well, the grant, yes, the requirements do change, but we have legally accepted the principle of development of the site, and now we're actually considering design and landscaping primarily. So it does present a practical limit in terms of how much we can, in essence, retrofit.
Yes. Yeah.
The outline already agreed.
It is disappointing, though, that with a layout such as this, a scheme such as this, that has spent so much time and effort and is very significant, it is disappointing to see not to see more a sustainable sustainability notice taken of the sustainability requirements.
The developers are missing the point.
Yes, exactly.
And are not keeping up with the trend. Because
our minutes will show, Councillor Fry, that view, with which we are all nodding.
Ross kindly mentioned the fact that it's harder to retrofit them on the planning, but actually the things haven't been built yet.
No, it's even harder to retrofit it on the building, exactly. Can I take point, is there anything further we can do within the conditions with this? I mean, we go round this one every time, and if there isn't, there isn't, but I know that the committee would like us to probe that and see what more we can add.
We could consider adding a condition requiring the submission of a sustainability statement.
We would like that. Could we have that? Yes, please.
Bearing in mind that gas boilers cannot be installed within a few years anyway, they're going to have to come up with an alternative.
Lovely. Right. We will have a new condition then that we would wish to see a sustainability statement. That's probably the best we can do. Any other questions? We're still on questions. Yeah.
The chart, looking at this chart around here, Ross, is that a gravel track around there? So whether you want to bring that back up on the screen.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's the proposed footpath link. Let me bring it up to you.
So I'm looking at that map there, and I'm looking at the top left corner. There's a dead end there.
Oh, there's a path.
Yeah.
Goes in here towards the football pitch.
Right. So we'll go straight down, then along the bottom of the development.
Over here.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So a future link is indicated.
To me, there is an ideal opportunity for a running track or an exercise track around there. Dorchester's just got the great park run up and running. That would make a wonderful location round there, other than you've got the road, which you'd have to shut. It's an ideal exercise location around the outside of that circuit there.
You might well be right, Councillor Fry, but I think we are out with the remit of this, but we have to consider the planning application as it is, not as we would like to see it. And I think we might have to just leave that thought there. We can't design in a running track, but I like the idea. Any other questions? Councillor Penfold, questions?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The hours of construction are 7 to 7. That seems rather long, 12 hours a day. Is this 6 days a week? 5?
No, it's Saturday morning. I think. Let me double check. It's on page 54. Page 54 of the report outlines the hours. So the hours are 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. on Saturdays, with no activity on Sundays or bank holidays. And
it just seems a long time, 7 to 7. That's.
I think it's usually what the environmental health officer recommends, and it does tie in with their legislation in terms of noise nuisance as well. If I could stress that if we need to formally consider if that should be added as a condition, because it's been done. But
right, and that's your additional condition that you mentioned at the beginning, is it? Yes.
Thank you.
And the thing about the construction time, always, of course, it has to be said, is that you're balancing being really badly disturbed for a number of months, or for the number of months to go on and on and on, and it's horses for courses.
Yes.
Any other questions,
No,
Mary?
thank you.
Councillor Hall, do you have any questions?
I do have a question, although I'm not quite sure how relevant it is now that Steve mentioned about the adoption, but a local development to me has also got what is termed in this application as the central parking courts. Because it's got central parking courts, this one I'm talking about, the roads aren't quite as wide as they would be without them. These parking courts are not lit. Therefore, residents refuse to use them. Therefore, they all park on the streets. Therefore, the swept path analysis for bin lorries, etc., doesn't work, and they end up driving all over the curbs and all over the verges. Are these parking courts lit?
Ross, are the parking courts lit? Could you indicate the parking courts on the design we have up there?
Yeah. We have one parking court here, so it's west of one of the affordable apartment units. The second apartment building is also served by another parking court there. And we have a final rear parking court here behind some of the open market.
Are they lit?
Again, we have that outline, condition 14, that states that prior to the occupation of the development hereby approved a lighting strategy to reduce the use of artificial light sources to comply with ecology guidance shall be submitted and agreed by the local planning authority. So I think that does in effect require a lighting strategy for developments to be submitted and agreed by us.
Okay.
I can't confirm at this stage if those specific courtyards will be lit or not.
The unfortunate thing with that statement is that time, etc., disappears after we leave this building.
Yes.
And I've got no idea in the future whether this lighting will happen or will not happen. And I just have this experience of the considerable problems that it causes by these areas not being lit.
Yes, it's the usual thing of the experience, the lived experience of real people on this committee, not finding its way into the actual plans. Is there anything we can do? Can we, does a minute help that we?
They're relatively small parking courts.
Yes.
They're very well related to the flats.
Are they? Right.
And they would be allocated. So I do take the point that not everyone would use their parking space, but the convenient option would be to use your allocated space in the parking court and then walk straight into the apartment building.
So they are quite well designed in that regard.
A lot of opportunities. Steve might be able to comment on this, to park on the road in those numbers at the junction.
Well, it's an offence to park in close proximity to a junction anyway. As the highway authority, if we're not adopting it, we can't insist on it being lit, but I think there's a very common sense suggestion that you do get them lit. We want to encourage people to park within them.
Yes.
Quite right, councillor, if people can't park and they don't feel safe or they don't think their vehicles are going to be safe when they park on the highway. I was just checking the swept path analysis, which does allow for parking in the majority of locations on the Spine Road. It is wide enough to get the refuse vehicle through. What you obviously don't want is proliferation of on-street car parking because it ruins the urban aesthetic of your lovely design here, doesn't it? So I think there's a balance to be found, but I take your suggestion. It'd probably be preferable if it was lit.
It's just this area that I'm talking about. Dorset Council staff is already having to talk with the developer about moving trees, about having to move light stanchions because of the problems that have been created.
Yeah, it's very helpful observation.
Condition
Yes,
Conditional lighting.
Yes.
Permitted for the parking court.
Yes, please. Yes. Yes, that would help. We're getting a lot of it. Would that help you if we condition it?
That would be great.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor, any more questions? Sorry.
It's a sort of question, but just a sort of comment. I mean, the use of the green-blue urban route barriers is absolutely fantastic, and if our planning officers could take this sort of principle away to other sites that come forward, because it really is a fantastic way of preserving the pavements and curbs and stuff on our estates that we build.
Lovely, thank you very much. Very helpful.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But he'll give us a little tutorial after the meeting.
I'll explain afterwards.
Yes, yes. Councillor Heatley, questions? We're still on questions, but yes.
No questions.
And Councillor Pottery, any questions?
No questions, Chairman.
Good. We've had some very useful questions and quite a long list of new conditions. I'm now throwing it open to debate, and I'm looking towards the ward member there to kick the debate off. Thank you, Carol.
I just welcome more house building in Sturminster Newton. Our schools need it desperately, despite people worrying. They're all under numbers, which means they're not financially secure and they run in deficit each year. I'm particularly pleased that we've got more parking than they could have gotten away with, really, so which is good. 29 affordable, would have liked more, but 29 is better than nothing. And I'm really quite happy with this. So I am going to move. Oh, and I'm so pleased we're having bird boxes and bat boxes. Yep. I was really happy with that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I am proposing.
Thank you. I'm delighted. Thank you very much. On the basis of the bird and bat boxes, we've had a proposal. Councillor Fry, you'd like to second. Does anyone have anything else to say?
Is the proposer and
The conditioner, yes, yes. Can we just be clarified? And I'm just going to run through all the extra conditions, but before we do that, Councillor Heatley, did you?
Just ritual disappointment with the solar panel and so on.
Yes. Yes, I know what you mean about ritual. That's a bit what it feels like, but we will register our disappointment that this development that is so successful in so many ways, we feel a little bit let down on the sustainability front. Now, just if we could just remember all the conditions. So that there was, for condition number 6, we were going to add to that we were looking for a minimum, at the minimum, to see EV charging infrastructure for each dwelling, and we're asking the officers to consider a good solution to the blocks of flats. Yeah.
We could add a paragraph in that existing condition that says the scheme shall provide for access to charging points for each dwelling, unless there are specific reasons why this would not be technically or technically possible. So that we have the assumption that each dwelling, regardless of being a flat or not, has a charging point, unless there's a reason why that could not be provided because of the specific layout we have here.
Yeah.
But obviously officers trying to secure as many as we can, through that. So we don't set a limit that causes an issue for the developer at the same time.
I'm very happy with that. Good. The second, we needed a new condition then that we would have a sustainability statement before
consider if that's prior to commencement.
Yes.
I think we could have it prior to the construction of the dwellings above damp courts.
Exactly, that's just what I was thinking.
That will come out in the technical detail stage of the development. So the developer will know then what they have to do to meet building regulations and other specifications.
Yeah, good. Happy with that. Happy with that. We wanted another new condition, or somewhere in that, because I think it was a new condition, that we would have a lighting plan for the parking courts.
I think that should either be prior to above damp course or prior to first occupation.
Damp course gives them more time to get it right. And then we had your extra condition, which was for the hours of work, which is in there.
It's a compliance condition for the hours of stay.
We're clear about that. Lovely. The proposer and the seconder, you have proposed and seconded with all of those those conditions as stated, Councillor Hall.
Sorry, I've just thought of something else.
Yeah, go on.
Which hopefully can be added on. As Councillor Jones mentioned, it's fantastic to see these bird and bat boxes.
Yes.
Bearing in mind it's a wooded area, could we please have owl boxes? Because the average British owl does not fit in a bird box.
Yes, could we just have it? Absolutely.
We won't get them on the houses, though.
No.
Areas around.
Right, okay.
That might have to just be, I'm not sure where we can condition that. That just might have to be an informative note. I like a nice informative note to take cognizance of the fact that it's a wooded area and some of the birds will be owls who need larger houses. So some of the large 3-bedroom houses for the owls. We're very nearly there. I think we're ready to go to the vote. Any more before I put?
We covered on the footpath by the wooded area, just to make sure it is definitely safe, but at night for walking up and down.
Would you like to include that in the lighting conditions?
Please.
Lighting conditions.
As Ross has said, there's balance to be struck there.
Yes, it's a,
Understand.
Light can be very intrusive, and we've got wildlife corridors around the site. So I
yes,
think at night it's unlikely you would be using
walking that.
the footpaths closer to the development where you have that light spur and you have the activity there. So I think we need to be careful about
Yes.
what we do there. I think the condition on the outline is more geared towards the ecology constraints.
Yes.
Trying to get actually the least intrusive lighting that we can get, that's still safe, but doesn't have that impact on wildlife.
Yeah.
You can't have owl boxes and lighting. They don't. No.
Months, they could easily walk back down.
Only it'll be dark by 4 o'clock in the winter.
Yeah.
So there is a balance to be had
Just
between
the
lighting.
balance.
Can we just put a word in? We've got our lighting condition that it's.
Do you like that, Councillor?
To be balanced between safety and ecology, but realistically, I think safety has to be prioritised over
the green buffer area to provide as well in the lighting condition on the rear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ties in with the requirement of it being safe,
Lovely.
parking courts and in the buffer area.
Yes. Yes.
Speak again.
Good. Good. Any more for any more? I don't want to stop this very constructive discussion, but I think we're ready to go to the vote. Could we have the sorry, Ross is still writing. I beg it. Could we have the recommendations on the screen, please, for the benefit of the people watching, so they know what we're.
I've stopped sharing this, and what I can do is I can bring up the heading of the.
I have done that. I will check again. Yes. Right, just to, while we're doing that, just to absolutely double check that the proposer and the seconder are happy now with all of the extra conditions and the amendments and the informatives that we put in. And you, Les, you're very happy too. Good. So we know what we're voting on then. Yes, good. If we can't get it up on the screen, then we can't. But it's helpful for the people watching if they know what we're voting on. Don't worry, it's we're proposing that we're going to accept this application as recommended with a whole tranche of new conditions and amended conditions. All those in favour, raise your hand. Any against? That's excellent. Thank you very much. That one is carried. Good. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no urgent items and there's no exempt business, so wait for it. I will now close the meeting formally. Thank you very much, and we're now